A British diplomat vanishes into thin air in a small Prussian town, leaving only his coat and pants behind. Parts of women's bodies turn up along the Thames with no clue who did it, and a merchant ship completely vanishes, but then it comes back years later full of loot. These are historical mysteries that defy logic. Back in 1809, during the Napoleonic Wars, a British diplomat named Benjamin Bathurst just vanished. He was only 25, the son of the Bishop of Norwich, and he was traveling through Prussia with a courier under fake names to avoid attention. On November 25th, the two of them stopped in a little town called Parleberg. They ate at an inn called the White Swan, and Benjamin spent a few hours writing before they got word their horses were ready. Around 9 p.m., Bathurst walked out to head to the carriage, but when his courier showed up just minutes later, Benjamin was gone. He wasn't in the carriage, he wasn't at the inn, didn't seem like he was anywhere. He ended up finding Bathurst's expensive fur coat stashed in an outhouse, and later his pants tossed in the woods, but Bathurst himself never found. While everyone knows the story of Jack the Ripper, there was another string of cases happening around the exact same time in London that don't get talked about nearly as much. The Thames torso cases. I guess Jack the Ripper just has a bit more of a ring to it. It's hard not to talk about these cases without going into the gruesome details as well. Between 1887 and 1889, 4 different women's remains were discovered in and around the River Thames, and to this day, nobody knows who is behind it. First case is known as the Rainham Mystery. In May of 1887, a lighterman pulling a sack from the Thames found what turned out to be a torso. And over the next few weeks, more parts of the same woman turned up in different spots around London's waterways, but her head was never found. And there were no leads on who was responsible. The doctor who examined her, though, said whoever did it clearly knew their way around anatomy. Then there was the Whitehall mystery in 1888. When parts of another woman were found in different locations, including inside the construction site for the new Scotland Yard headquarters. This was around the same time the Ripper was active, so some thought the two were connected, but the methods here were very different. In 1889, Elizabeth Jackson, a homeless woman, was identified as the victim in a third case after her remains were discovered at multiple sites along the Thames. In that same year, a headless torso was left beneath a railway arch in Whitechapel. That was the last known victim, but the so-called torso killer and most of the victims were never identified. In 1695, a merchant ship called the Ouzel left Dublin under Captain Owen Macy. The official story was that it was headed to Smyrna, in what's now Turkey, on a trading run, but the ship never came back. After 3 years with no word, everyone assumed it was gone and the crew was declared dead. But then, 5 years later, after it first left, the Ouzel suddenly returned to Dublin. To everyone's complete shock, the crew was all still alive, and they were carrying what a lot of people said looked a lot like pirate loot. Captain Macy explained that their ship had been seized by North African pirates, and that he and his men had been forced to sail under them, raiding merchant vessels for years. He claimed they finally managed to escape after overpowering their captors while they were intoxicated during a rowdy party, made off with all the treasure. It was a pretty incredible story, but there was also a rumor that the crew was running their own piracy operation that whole time, and that the Smyrna voyage was just a cover story. Dorothy Arnold was a young socialite from a rich New York family who disappeared in December of 1910. No one knows what happened to her. She just finished college and was trying to make it as a writer. On December 12th, she left her home to buy a dress for a party. She stopped at a few stores on Fifth Avenue, ran into a friend, seemed fine, said she was going to walk through Central Park, but she never showed up at the party. Weirdly, her family tried to keep things quiet at first, worried about bad press. They hired private detectives to search New York, but nothing turned up. Eventually, her father went public and offered a $1,000 reward, but still nothing. Of course, there are endless possibilities here, right? Was she killed in Central Park? Was she kidnapped? Did she take her own life? Could she have run off with a man she was secretly seeing? She did have a complicated relationship with a guy named George Griscom, but after months of dead ends, the police gave up, and Dorothy Arnold's disappearance is still one of New York's most infamous historical missing persons cases. Keyword there being historical. People, I think, go missing in New York all the time. In August of 1993, a group of 7 hikers set out into the Khamar-Daban Mountains in southern Siberia. Ludmila Korovina, an experienced guide, was leading the trip. They made good timing climbing up the peaks, but on August 4th, a sudden storm hit. They made camp, but had a hard time getting a fire going. And the next day, things just got worse, horrifically worse. As they descended back down, one hiker at the back started screaming out of nowhere. He was foaming at the mouth, bleeding from the eyes and ears, and convulsing. Then he just went still. Korovina ran to help him, but moments later she collapsed with the same symptoms. And then others followed, thrashing and clawing at themselves, tearing off their own clothes. Some began bashing their heads against rocks. Only one hiker, Valentina Otachenko, managed to escape, setting up a shelter for the night before making her way down the mountain. Autopsies on the hikers listed hypothermia as the main cause, though Korovina died of a heart attack. But was hypothermia really the case here? Some think it was altitude sickness, or hypothermia combined with hallucinations. Maybe they'd come into contact with some sort of toxin or nerve agent, poisonous mushrooms. Over 30 years later, though, no one really knows what made 6 healthy hikers collapse and die so violently in the Siberian wilderness. On Crete, over 4,000 years ago, people left behind an artifact now called the Phaistos Disc. It's a small clay circle covered in 242 symbols stamped into the clay in a spiral. Problem is, no one knows what they actually mean. The disc was found in 1908 by an Italian archaeologist, Luigi Pernier. Unlike other sites on Crete which were full of written tablets, this palace barely had any writing. The disc was unique, not part of any archive or collection, and the symbols aren't found anywhere else. Even the way it was made is strange. The signs were stamped with molds, basically like an ancient form of printing. Was it a religious text, piece of written history, some kind of game? Phaistos Disc is still a complete mystery. The Vikings settled in Greenland around the 10th century. About 500 years later, though, they disappeared. Nothing violent appeared to have happened, and nothing was taken. Maybe the winters got too brutal. Crops maybe failed. Some think a plague in Iceland and Norway forced them to leave, but that was it. Word would have gotten back home, but it didn't. And this isn't the only time a Viking settlement has disappeared. Way before Columbus, they set up a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada. Archaeologists found it in the 60s. It's the only confirmed Viking site in North America. But again, it didn't last. For whatever reason, they left, and unless we ever invent the time machine, we'll never really know what happened. In September of 1890, Louis Le Prince, a French artist and the inventor often called the father of the motion picture camera, disappeared without a trace. He was planning a trip to the US to show off his invention and join his family. On the 16th of September, he was supposed to catch a train to Paris, but he never showed up. His luggage vanished as well, and after that, no one ever saw him again. The French police, Scotland Yard, and his family searched everywhere, but he was nowhere to be found. He was officially declared dead 7 years later. Over the years, there have been theories. He was about to patent his projector in the UK, and people have speculated that Thomas Edison or his allies might have had a hand in taking him out. Maybe he chose to vanish. Did he owe someone money? In 1890, there was also a drowned man found in the Seine River in France who looked a lot like him. But even after Le Prince vanished, the mystery didn't let up. His son spent years trying to get the world to recognize that his dad had basically invented the movie camera first, but he died at just 29 years old. The official cause of death was that he'd taken his own life, but some people didn't buy that explanation. He'd been so adamant about finding his father and so determined to make his legacy known, it seemed out of place for him to just end it all. Between 1485 and 1551, England was hit by one of the most bizarre and terrifying diseases in history called sweating sickness, or the sweats. Unlike the Black Death or other plagues, this one showed up really suddenly, it hit hard, and then it just disappeared as quickly as it showed up. People would go to bed feeling fine, and they'd be dead within a single day. The symptoms started with chills, dizziness, and intense aches, then suddenly shifted to this overwhelming, unstoppable sweat. Victims would also have rapid heartbeats, burning heat, and extreme exhaustion. And one attack didn't necessarily make survivors immune. Some people got hit multiple times before it finally killed them. What's really weird is who it hit as well. Most medieval diseases didn't spare children or the elderly, but the sweats seemed to solely target adults, especially men in their 30s and 40s. And it didn't stick to cities. Rural towns were hit just as hard. No one knows what caused it. Some blame bad water, others think it came from animals. Theories come and go, but Luckily, the disease vanished after 1551. The SS Watertown was an oil tanker sailing out of California in 1924, hauling fuel toward the Panama Canal, and then on to New Orleans and New York. One day, two crew members, James Courtney and Michael Meehan, went down into a cargo tank to clean it. They didn't come back. Their deaths were ruled accidental. The next day, they were buried at sea. But that's not where the story ends. Crew members started seeing their faces bobbing in the water off the ship's side. Multiple people reported the same sightings over several days. When the ship reached New Orleans, the company that owned the Watertown suggested the captain try to photograph these apparitions, and he did. Out of 6 photos, 5 came back blank, but one seemed to show the faces of Courtney and Meehan, clear enough to be recognized by the people who'd known them. That photo has become one of the most famous ghost photographs ever captured. Is the photo genuine though? Are these really the ghosts of those 2 sailors? Is it just a case of pareidolia, or is it one of those early spirit photography stunts? The original negative is gone, unfortunately, so probably never know. With all that said, I've been your host James. I'll catch you, yes you specifically, next time.